Have you ever seen Jumper from 2008? It's a movie that seemed to have everything going for it. An interesting premise and concept, an exciting cast, and the potential to launch a film franchise, or at least a sequel. However, despite these strengths, Jumper didn't stand out in the sci-fi genre, and didn't get a continuation that could have explored its intriguing universe further. So why am I talking about this movie more than a decade later? And why do I think Jumper deserves a sequel? If you're interested in these questions, keep watching this video, because together we'll break down why Jumper was actually a good movie, how it captured the imagination of many, and why it absolutely deserves another chance to shine on the big screen.
What's new?
First of all, Jumper had one of the most interesting sci-fi premises in cinema at that time, much like Hancock. However, both films were overshadowed by titles like The Incredible Hulk and Iron Man, which were the catalyst for the superhero boom that would dominate the next decade. The ability to teleport anywhere in the world at any moment offers endless possibilities, not only for spectacular action scenes but also for telling deeper stories. Imagine being able to instantly transport yourself anywhere in the world or bring someone with you. The film captured that awesome idea with a visual style that allowed audiences to experience the thrill of teleportation. Doug Liman, known for action-packed films like The Bourne Identity and Edge of Tomorrow, brought this concept to life on the big screen. The idea of teleporting or jumping wasn't just a visual trick, it was intertwined with the film's world building. Jumpers have existed for centuries, and their abilities have a deep history, which explains why they're hunted by the Paladins, an organization that believes only God should have such powers. Jumper not only explored the interesting aspects of teleportation, but also established a universe with rules, limitations, and conflicts. That's where the film truly shines. The existence of jump scars, those cracks in the fabric of space-time left by jumps, added more depth to the mechanics of teleportation. The idea that jumpers could be tracked and hunted through these scars gave the movie a tense cat-and-mouse dynamic between David and Roland. This world-building is a solid foundation for future stories. With jumpers capable of distorting space and paladins dedicated to eradicating them, the stage is set for a conflict that could expand across multiple films. The concept was strong enough to justify sequels, and that's why I believe it's one of the reasons Jumper deserves another installment.
I'm a long way from robbing banks.
Now let's talk about Hayden Christensen's portrayal of David Rice. When the film was released in 2008, Hayden was still dealing with the backlash from his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels. At the time, his performance was heavily criticized, and that sentiment seemed to follow him into Jumper. However, in retrospect, I think Christensen's performance wasn't as bad as many made it out to be. In fact, I believe he brought a sense of vulnerability and disconnection to the character of David, a young man who was abandoned by his mother and grew up feeling isolated. David's journey throughout the film is one of self-discovery and survival. He starts as a confused teenager who realizes he has an extraordinary ability and uses it to escape his troubled life. But as the movie progresses, he is forced to confront the consequences of his powers, especially when they put the people he loves in danger. This is where we see that Christensen did a good job balancing David's arrogant, carefree attitude with his underlying emotional turmoil. One of the film's strengths is David's internal conflict. He's not your typical superhero. At first, he uses his powers for selfish reasons, teleporting into bank vaults, stealing money, and living a luxurious, consequence-free life. But as his story advances, David is forced to face the fact that his powers have put him in the crosshairs of the Paladins, a group that kills jumpers. The tension between his desire for freedom and the dangers his powers bring is a compelling arc that deserves to be developed more in a sequel. If given the chance, a sequel could allow Christensen to fully redeem himself in the eyes of fans and critics, especially after his well-received return in Ahsoka. By delving deeper into David's character, the franchise would have the opportunity to more fully explore the emotional and psychological dimensions of being a jumper, something that was only touched upon in the first film. The action is where Jumper truly shines. From the first jump, when David teleports from a frozen river to a library, the movie is filled with creative and exciting action sequences. Director Doug Liman made sure that teleportation wasn't just a visual effect, but a central part of the choreography. The film's action scenes often use teleportation in clever ways, making the fights unpredictable and visually impressive. something that reminds me of the scene in X-Men 2 when Nightcrawler attacks the White House. One of the best examples is the fight scene between David and Griffin. This battle showcased the potential of jump-based combat, with both characters moving from place to place, using their powers not just to fight but to evade each other's attacks. The use of real-world locations like the Colosseum in Rome added an extra layer of excitement to the film. The fact that the characters could be anywhere at any time is undeniably a fascinating premise. Then there's the scene where Griffin teleports a bus over Roland in the middle of a fight, one of the most creative uses of teleportation in the film. These moments showed how the power of jumping could lead to impressive action sequences, and it's a shame we never got to see more of this creativity in future movies. In a new installment, the possibilities for expanding the action would be endless. With better technology and visual effects, a follow-up film could take jump-based combat to the next level. Imagine jumpers fighting not just in cities, but on other planets or even across time. The potential for epic action scenes is limitless, and the original Jumper only scratched the surface of what could be done with this concept.
Give me the dead man, David!
One of the standout characters in Jumper was Griffin O'Connor, played by Jamie Bell. Unlike David, Griffin had been living as a jumper for years and was much more experienced in using his powers. Griffin was a survivor who had been hunted by paladins his entire life, and his relentless practical approach to dealing with them made him one of the most interesting characters in the film. Griffin brought a level of complexity to the story that David's character didn't have. He was a loner, living in a hideout filled with maps and weapons, constantly planning his next move against the paladins. His backstory, where we learn that his parents were killed by the paladins when he was just a child, added a layer of tragedy to his character that made him more relatable. Griffin's mission in life was to kill the paladins, and his dark, vengeful personality contrasted with David's more carefree approach to his powers. Many Jumper fans were disappointed that we didn't get to see more of Griffin's story. He would have made a great anti-hero, someone who could easily have been the focus of a sequel or even his own spin-off movie. A new installment could explore Griffin's past, his battles with the paladins, and how he learned to perfect his abilities. In many ways, Griffin was the key to unlocking a wider Jumper universe. His knowledge of the paladins, his survival tactics, and his ability to fully manipulate his powers could have made him a mentor for David in future films. A sequel centered on their partnership or rivalry would be fascinating to watch.
Only God should have this power. Not you, David.
As mentioned earlier, Jumper did an excellent job establishing a universe full of potential to explore. The war between the Jumpers and the Paladins, a conflict that has lasted for centuries, could have been the foundation for an entire franchise, similar to what Assassin's Creed achieved in its universe. The Paladins, led by Roland, played by Samuel L. Jackson, are a mysterious organization that has been hunting Jumpers for generations. Their belief that only God should have the power to be everywhere at once added a philosophical layer to the movie that deserved to be explored further. In the first film, we only get small glimpses of the Paladins' history and their motives. We don't know how they started, how they developed their anti-Jumper technology, or how far their influence reaches. A sequel could delve deeper into the Paladins' history, showing us more of their lore and perhaps introducing new characters who challenge their worldview. The idea that Jumpers are hunted by Paladins adds a level of tension to the world building that makes it feel dangerous and lived in. Every time David uses his powers, he risks being discovered. This constant threat is a great foundation for future films, where the stakes could be even higher. Imagine Jumpers banding together around the world to take down the Paladins once and for all, or even discovering other secret organizations with their own agendas. The original movie hinted that Jumpers could teleport to other planets or even through time. These are fascinating concepts that could take the franchise in entirely new directions. By exploring these ideas, a sequel could turn Jumper into a franchise that not only tells personal stories of survival and conflict, but also tackles larger themes of power, control, and freedom. Perhaps the strongest argument for a Jumper sequel is the number of missed opportunities in the first movie. Jumper left several plot threads dangling, and a sequel could have tied them together while expanding the original story. The revelation that David's mother is a paladin was a major plot twist, but it was never fully explored. Questions like, why did she abandon David as a child? What is her true role within the Paladins? Does she feel conflicted about having to hunt her own son? These are issues that a sequel could address, bringing more emotional depth to the story and enriching the relationships between the characters. Additionally, the first movie hinted at the possibility of Millie, David's love interest, learning to jump. In the book series, Millie eventually gains the ability to teleport, and it would have been exciting to see how that played out in the films. A sequel could further explore Millie's character, showing how she adapts to having powers of her own, and what that means for her relationship with David. Proof that a sequel might have been considered is that Doug Liman, the director of Jumper, mentioned in interviews that there were ideas to expand the abilities of the Jumpers even further, allowing them to teleport not just between locations, but also across different timelines. Imagine what a sequel could achieve by exploring new historical eras or alternate realities, expanding the universe of the Jumpers beyond what we saw in the first film. These possibilities could breathe new life into the franchise and allow the story to reach new dimensions. In 2018, Doug Liman returned to the Jumper universe with the television series Impulse, a loose adaptation of the third book in the Jumper series by Stephen Gould. The show, which aired on YouTube Premium, followed a teenager named Henrietta Cole, who discovers she has the ability to teleport after a traumatic event. While Impulse wasn't a direct sequel to Jumper, it proved that there was still interest in the concept of teleportation and the world of Jumpers. Impulse ran for 2 seasons and was praised for its darker tone and deeper exploration of the psychological impact of teleportation. The show focused more on the personal struggles of its main character, rather than the action-packed adventure of the original movie, but it still captured the intrigue of jumping and the dangers that come with it. The success of Impulse demonstrates that there is still an audience for stories set in the Jumper universe. Although the TV series took a more grounded approach, it showed that the concept of teleportation can be used to tell compelling, emotionally resonant stories. A proper Jumper sequel could draw inspiration from Impulse, combining the emotional depth of the series with the action of the original movie. In conclusion, Jumper may not have been perfect, but it was far from a failure. The film introduced an interesting and original concept, built a fascinating world, and left the door open for future stories. With its intriguing premise, strong action sequences, and complex characters like Griffin and Roland, Jumper had all the ingredients to become a successful franchise. The potential to expand the Jumper universe is huge. With current advances in visual effects and storytelling, a follow-up film could take the franchise to new heights and finally give audiences the sequel they've been waiting for. But what do you think? Do you agree that Jumper deserves a sequel? Did you enjoy the original film, or do you think it was too flawed to continue? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Hey, don't go just yet. If you enjoyed my video, I'd love to recommend another one for you to watch.